At 4:20 in the morning, a low-altitude FPV drone descended beneath the tree cover, crossing its last 20 meters within seconds before exploding next to a shallow defensive position. The detonation tore through earth and wood, hurling fragments over 30 meters and destroying cover that had been reliable for weeks. Additional attacks swept down the tree line moments afterward. Infantry abandoned their hiding spots. Armored units paused, then withdrew. The chaos appeared random, but it was calculated. This isn't about a single blast. It's about how affordable FPV drones are transforming combat by compelling movement, reviewing patterns, and making seconds lethal. Forces aren't being defeated by firepower alone. They're being forced into errors. Once this pressure starts, the result is typically determined before the subsequent detonation is heard. The initial attack didn't come with drama. It came with purpose. Shortly past 4:30 a.m., an FPV drone descended under the canopy at approximately 12 to 15 meters elevation, flying slowly enough to evade instant detection, yet near enough to be audible. The motors were persisted for almost 6 seconds, beyond what comfort permits. That hesitation was significant. It wasn't random. The drone didn't plunge. It suspended itself, maintaining its position at an estimated 40 to 45 meters from the closest fighting hole. Then a deliberate detonation hit the earth close by, not a precise strike. The explosion threw dirt and shattered wood over a 25 to 30 meter area, destroying part of a shallow trench that had required days to construct. The impact was instant. Infantry squeezed closer to tree trunks. Others flattened into shallow depressions barely 30 centimeters deep. For roughly 90 seconds, movement ceased. Then the pressure succeeded. A lone figure repositioned by fewer than 3 meters. Another crawled toward denser vegetation, reviewing a shoulder for an instant. From overhead, that was sufficient. The FPV followed movement, not clothing. Form and timing were more critical than hiding. A second drone approached the area from another direction, plunging through a tight opening in the canopy at nearly 70 kilometers per hour. Its descent was brief. Its explosion destroyed the leftover cover and pushed the team farther into the forest. Within 4 minutes, the position technically remained, but authority was lost. Radio chatter fell by over half. Movement reduced to bursts lasting seconds. Every decision now involved danger. This wasn't an elimination effort. It was preparation, and it succeeded. Following the first pressure, quiet descended, but the wrong type. For close to 2 minutes, the tree line stayed nearly motionless. No sounds, no radio communication above whispers. The FPV had withdrawn just enough to survive, hovering at an estimated 60 meters, orbiting slowly. That separation was crucial. It maintained the sound's presence without providing a simple target. The pressure didn't diminish. It deepened. Instinct started undermining discipline. One soldier adjusted his stance, dragging equipment against bark. Another attempted sliding behind a fallen tree barely wider than half a meter. A third abandoned cover, running 5 to 6 paces toward thicker brush. Each action took under a second. From ground level, it seemed hidden. From above, it was plain. A spray of automatic gunfire erupted upward. Approximately 20 to 25 rounds missed, shredding foliage and splinters from branches. The drone remained steady. The muzzle flash accomplished the task for it. In one moment, the shooter's location was identified. Sound, illumination, and recoil combined into an obvious indicator. The FPV tightened its circle. Not nearer, not quicker, simply more compact. What came next was another measured blast. Indirect, not centered. The detonation landed within 10 meters, compelling figures to abandon cover. Earth showered down. The decision became urgent. Remain suppressed and wait, or relocate and risk visibility. Most selected movement. This is the instant worth examining. If you were present, would you rely on the tree before you, or would you flee? Because that choice is precisely what this system exploits. After 7 minutes, the team had lost unity. Intervals broke down. 2 men shifted in the same direction simultaneously. An aerial signature operators searched for initially. Radio communications became disjointed. The position persisted, but authority didn't. That loss of authority establishes the foundation for what follows. Because once movement grows predictable, the subsequent strike doesn't require searching. The critical attack arrived without notice. At roughly 4:41 a.m., a second FPV drone approached the sector from behind the tree line, dropping through an opening in the canopy under 2 meters across. It advanced rapidly, covering the final 25 meters in fewer than 3 seconds, and exploded in the confined area between the defensive position and the tree roots that had provided shelter. The blast was focused and contained. Earth, fractured timber, and pieces of broken ground scattered outward across a 35 to 40 meter zone. What had served as a modest refuge transformed into a compression chamber. The explosion didn't have to eliminate the position. It only had to destroy the final sense of security. Within moments, motion intensified. 2 shapes fled in opposing directions. Another collapsed prone, then twisted, attempting to evade the approach vector. From overhead, the sequence was evident. Bodies moved from cover by under half a second, but that interval was adequate. The drone hadn't speculated. It had observed. A third FPV committed instantly. His trajectory was sharper, hitting at an angle meant to block withdrawal rather than pursue it. The detonation struck within 5 meters of the escape path, collapsing loose earth and driving the remaining survivors deeper among the trees. By 4:43 a.m., the position no longer operated as a formation. Radio messages briefly increased, then went silent. Distance between individuals extended past 20 meters, too broad for supporting each other and too tight to prevent discovery. What remained wasn't a defensive perimeter, but separate movement under surveillance. This was the instant the approach became clear. The first drone had generated pressure. The second had compelled exposure. The final engagement eliminated the remaining alternatives. No individual strike bore the full responsibility. The result emerged from arrangement and coordination. In under 9 minutes, a position that had consumed weeks of effort lost structure. There was no extended firefight, no prolonged defensive. Authority disappeared first. Destruction came after. Once authority vanishes, the battlefield no longer answers to those below. It answers to what observes from above. What came next wasn't a break. It was an extension. Under 10 minutes after the infantry position failed, FPV operations moved deeper down the line. The same low-elevation approach shifted from personnel to equipment. An armored vehicle backing along a dirt path was identified at the tree belt's edge, its engine signature and motion detectable from overhead, even with partial concealment. The first FPV didn't attack right away. It observed from roughly 80 meters distance, verifying velocity, heading, and halting locations. When the vehicle decelerated near a dugout reinforced with lumber and earth, the drone advanced and exploded against the rear portion, not to annihilate it, but to designate it. The blast charred external gear, destroyed optics, and forced the crew to stop. That stoppage was sufficient. A second FPV appeared shortly after, descending through the dugout's exposed roof where the vehicle had sought protection. The explosion was restricted but functional. Within the limited area, pressure magnified. Within moments, smoke saturated the hollow and the crew evacuated the site. Close by, a self-propelled artillery piece concealed under soil and camouflage netting was located after multiple drone sweeps. Once its site was determined, size became a disadvantage. The vehicle couldn't relocate swiftly without revealing itself. An FPV impacted along the upper framework, followed by a grenade dropper suspended overhead, dropping several munitions into vulnerable gaps. The operation completed in fewer than 5 minutes. No artillery bombardment, no frontal engagement, just continuous pressure until motion became unfeasible. This represented a shift. Heavy platforms designed to withstand shrapnel and light weapons were being drawn into the same low-altitude threat area as infantry. Protection postponed harm, but it didn't stop identification. Once the site was identified, elimination became about opportunity. Armor was no longer defense. It was a beacon. As more vehicles decelerated, concealed themselves, or halted completely, the following challenge emerged. What occurs when an entire formation cannot maneuver without observation? Once the vehicles started hesitating, the formation began fragmenting. A mechanized component tried advancing along a confined access corridor under 6 meters wide, positioning vehicles at approximately 25 to 30 meter intervals to minimize danger. Under typical circumstances, that separation would have worked. Under low-altitude monitoring, it became vulnerability. The forward vehicle slowed upon identifying drone presence. The second adjusted slightly to preserve spacing. The third paused for under 3 seconds, sufficient time for its location to be registered. That brief disruption of cadence cascaded rearward through the convoy. Routes congested. Coordination failed. FPV drones capitalized on the confusion. One attack forced a vehicle to halt at exposed terrain's boundary. Another followed moments after, striking vulnerable areas near the tail. The bulk that once offered safety now restricted withdrawal possibilities. Reversing required room that had disappeared. Advancing forward meant traversing ground already monitored. Within 8 minutes, the convoy was no longer progressing as one. Individual vehicles separated by over 60 meters, each seeking independent cover. That dispersion simplified tracking, not complicated it. A solitary heat signature against clear terrain is far more conspicuous than a clustered group under combined concealment. Support elements were summoned. An armored recovery vehicle approached to aid a disabled platform. Moving at below 20 kilometers per hour, it was spotted almost instantly. The attack that came required no accuracy, just closeness. The recovery operation terminated before it started. This wasn't a breakdown of strength. It was a breakdown of command. Once rhythm and spacing dissolved, every vehicle transformed from asset to liability. When formations fracture under stress, the battlefield ceases following strategies and begins following whoever maintains observation. As surface movement decreased, the conflict elevated skyward. FPV teams started redirecting focus from vehicles to the atmosphere itself, engaging enemy UAVs that had been relaying positions and monitoring motion. A quadcopter emerged above the tree line at approximately 120 meters height, drifting with air currents while keeping visual surveillance on the withdrawal paths beneath. Left undisturbed, it could chart trenches, trail vehicles, and direct attacks within minutes. An interceptor FPV deployed immediately. It ascended aggressively, closing the vertical distance in fewer than 8 seconds, approaching from the rear angle where the target's camera couldn't readily compensate. There was no effort to maneuver or intimidate. Velocity mattered beyond precision. The collision was clean. At closing velocities estimated beyond 140 kilometers per hour, the strike demolished propellers and severed the control connection instantly. The hostile UAV plummeted without a follow-up attempt. This wasn't an isolated incident. Comparable intercepts continued, occasionally 2 within 10 minutes, opening temporary airspace corridors. Each elimination decreased the adversary's alert period by vital seconds. Without aerial observation, supply movements slowed, trench activity halted, and artillery adjustments weakened. The ground effect was immediate. Units could reposition in brief intervals of 15 to 20 seconds without being followed. Those narrow opportunities mattered. They diminished chaos, curtailed vulnerability, and recovered portions of command. Drone versus drone confrontations had become standard. Once that occurred, the struggle for low altitude ceased being solely about attacks. It transformed into a battle for observation, because whichever side maintains its surveillance determines what ground forces can accomplish. What this material fundamentally demonstrates is a transformation that demands attention. Authority on modern battlefields no longer derives from possessing more personnel or stronger armor. It derives from dominating the low sky, preserving your observation while eliminating the opposition's capacity to monitor. When forests, excavations, and armored shells all fail to ensure protection, defending becomes a competition against identification, not a measure of firepower. Inexpensive FPV drones have made time the most precious asset. Seconds of advance notice determine whether a formation relocates safely or disintegrates under strain. Once motion is monitored, The conclusion is frequently established well before the terminal strike lands. That's why formations fail not from a solitary impact but from loss of command. The genuine question currently is how military forces respond. Will defensive measures develop quickly enough to counter this strain? Or will the low sky persist in becoming more saturated and merciless? If this type of detailed combat examination resonates with you, express your perspective below. Do you believe authority over low-altitude airspace will characterize future conflicts?